I still remember that morning as if it were etched into my memory. The sunlight poured gently through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room, while the faint song of birds drifted in through the window. I had just made myself a cup of tea, and as the steam curled upward, I glanced at the half-open suitcase lying on my bed. For the first time in years, I was planning a small trip for myself. A little getaway that I had been putting off far too long. My life had always revolved around my daughter, Anna, who meant everything to me. She was my reason for waking up every morning, the center of my world. Planning something just for myself felt odd, almost selfish, but necessary. As I folded my clothes and carefully placed them in the suitcase, I heard it, the faint creak of floorboards in the hallway. Anna was supposed to be asleep. Her bedroom door had been shut all night, and the house had been quiet. But that sound, it made me stop mid-motion, holding my breath. I brushed it off quickly and continued packing, though a small unease lingered in the back of my mind. Then, as I bent to tuck my shoes neatly at the bottom of the suitcase, something unusual caught my eye. A small corner of an envelope peeking out from beneath the bed. At first, I thought it might be an old receipt or a piece of forgotten mail that had slipped under. But when I reached down and pulled it out, my heart skipped. It wasn't just one envelope, it was an entire bundle. Several letters tied neatly together with a red ribbon, as if someone had wanted to keep them hidden yet organized. My pulse quickened as I placed the bundle on the bed. The handwriting on the first envelope wasn't Anna's. It was jagged, messy, almost desperate, and there was no stamp, no mailing address, nothing official. Just Anna's name scrawled across the front. I knew I shouldn't open it. I told myself it was private, that I'd be invading her trust. But a mother's instinct can be stronger than reason, and something deep inside me screamed that these letters weren't harmless. With trembling fingers, I slid the first one open. The words inside made my breath catch. "Anna, you promised me you wouldn't tell anyone. If they find out, it's over for both of us. Meet me at the place tonight, or I'll come to the house myself." I dropped the letter as my heart pounded. Who was writing to my daughter like this? What could she possibly be involved in that would lead to words like these? I picked up another envelope, unable to stop myself. The message was just as chilling. You can't keep running from this. If your mother finds out, it will destroy her. But you know what has to be done. Don't make me do something we'll both regret. My knees weakened, and I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, clutching the crumpled paper. Fear twisted in my chest. Someone was threatening my daughter. Someone knew a secret that she had kept from me, a secret so dark she believed I must never find out. My first impulse was to march straight into her room, wake her, and demand answers. But then I stopped. The tone of those letters, the way they were written, told me one thing. Anna wasn't hiding this because she didn't trust me. She was hiding it because she thought she was protecting me. That thought comforted me, but it also terrified me even more. Whatever she was caught up in, it was bigger than I could have imagined. Slowly, I tied the letters back together and slid them under the bed, just as I had found them. Then I sat in silence, waiting, listening to the house around me. Time moved painfully slow. My tea had long gone cold when I finally heard her bedroom door creak open. Anna stepped into the hallway. Her skin looked pale, and dark circles shadowed her eyes, as if she hadn't slept at all. She gave me a weak smile and said softly, "Morning, Mom?" "Morning, sweetheart," I replied, my voice calm though my heart was racing. I studied her face closely, and in that moment I saw it. Something heavy was weighing her down, something that kept her awake at night and haunted her every step. And I knew without a doubt that whatever trip I had planned could wait. My daughter was carrying a dark secret, a secret that was tearing her apart. And I wasn't about to let her face it alone. That morning, as Anna sat at the kitchen table with her coffee, I couldn't stop watching her. She stirred the cup slowly, her eyes fixed on the dark liquid as if her thoughts were a million miles away. Normally she would chatter about her plans or laugh at something on her phone, but this time she was silent. Her silence spoke louder than words, and I could feel the distance growing between us. I wanted to ask her outright. I wanted to hold up the letters and demand to know who was writing to her and why they were threatening her. But I held back. A confrontation would only push her further into secrecy, and I needed her to trust me enough to open up on her own. So instead I asked gently, "Did you sleep well, sweetheart?" She nodded, though her eyes remained downcast. "Yeah, fine. Just had a lot on my mind." The way she said it broke my heart. I could hear the weight in her voice, but she was trying so hard to sound casual. I forced a smile and tried to keep my tone light. "Well, sometimes sharing what's on your mind makes it a little easier to carry, you know?" She glanced at me then for only a moment, her eyes flickering with something unspoken. But just as quickly she looked away, murmuring, "I'll be fine, Mom." Those words cut deeper than she realized. "I'll be fine." The phrase we use when we're anything but fine. I busied myself with tidying the kitchen, but my thoughts were restless. I needed to know what she was hiding, because if those letters were true, someone dangerous was involved, and Anna was right in the middle of it. Later that afternoon, while Anna went out for a walk, I decided I couldn't sit idle anymore. My heart pounded as I returned to my bedroom and pulled the letters out again. I read through them carefully, one after another. The tone grew darker with each one. Some begged for her to meet in secret. Others hinted at something terrible she had witnessed, something that must never be spoken of. And a few carried words that chilled me to my core. One letter said, "If anyone else finds out what you know, you'll regret ever opening your mouth. Remember, Anna, secrets have consequences." My hands trembled as I set the letters back down. It was clear now. This wasn't teenage drama. It wasn't some foolish mistake. Anna was entangled in something serious, something that could endanger her, and perhaps even me. I thought back to the nights she came home later than usual, the times she avoided my questions, the way she jumped when the phone rang. All the signs were there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. When she came back from her walk, her cheeks were flushed from the cool air, but her expression was heavy, troubled. I decided to try a different approach. "Anna," I said gently, "I've noticed you've been carrying something inside you lately. You don't have to tell me everything right now, but I want you to know, whatever it is, you don't have to go through it alone." For a second, I thought she might break down and confess. Her lips parted, her eyes welled with tears, but then, just like that, she blinked them away and forced a smile. "I know, Mom. I promise. I'm okay." Then she disappeared into her room before I could stop her. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep, not with the letters burning in my mind. Finally, I made a decision. If Anna wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it myself. I needed to know who was behind those threats and what they wanted from my daughter. The next day, I waited until Anna left for school. I watched her walk down the street, her shoulders hunched as though she carried the weight of the world on her back. Once she was gone, I went into her room. It felt wrong, stepping into her private space, but I reminded myself that this wasn't about curiosity. This was about keeping her safe. Her room was neat, almost too neat. Her desk was clear, her books stacked carefully, her drawers in order. But then I noticed the wastebasket beside her desk. Crumpled papers, scraps torn up into pieces. My hands shook as I pulled them out and tried to fit them back together. Slowly, the words revealed themselves. A note written in the same jagged handwriting as the letters under my bed. It read, "Tomorrow night, by the old train tracks. Don't be late, or I'll make sure your mother finds out everything." My stomach dropped. Tomorrow night. That meant Anna was planning to meet this person, whoever they were, in a place isolated and dangerous. My blood ran cold at the thought. What could be so urgent, so threatening, that she would risk meeting someone like this in secret? I sat on the edge of her bed, holding the torn note in my hands, my mind racing. I had two choices: confront her and risk her shutting me out completely, or follow her and see for myself who this mysterious person was. As a mother, I knew I couldn't sit back any longer, and so I made up my mind. Tomorrow night, I would follow my daughter. I would uncover the truth behind her dark secret, even if it shattered everything I thought I knew about her. The following day felt like the longest day of my life. I tried to go about my routine, cleaning the house, cooking, keeping myself busy, but my mind was consumed by the note I had pieced together from Anna's wastebasket. Every time I glanced at my daughter, I noticed the way her eyes darted nervously to her phone, the way she chewed on her lip absent-mindedly, and the way her hands trembled when she thought I wasn't watching. She was carrying a burden far too heavy for someone her age, and it tore at my heart. When evening finally came, Anna ate dinner quietly, barely touching her food. She excused herself quickly and retreated to her room. I knew she was preparing for whatever meeting had been arranged at the old train tracks. I waited, trying to act natural, though my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Hours crawled by until finally, near midnight, I heard her door creak open. I held my breath as she tiptoed down the hallway, every step cautious, as though she feared waking me. But I was already waiting, wide awake. She slipped out the front door, the soft click of the latch sealing my decision. I couldn't let her go alone. Quietly, I grabbed my coat and followed, careful to stay far enough behind that she wouldn't notice. The night was cold, the streets eerily empty. I trailed her down familiar roads until she turned onto a path that led toward the abandoned train yard on the edge of town. My stomach knotted with dread. The place had been deserted for years, rusted tracks stretching into nothing, shadows swallowing the crumbling buildings. It was no place for a young woman to meet anyone, especially in the dead of night. I crouched behind a broken fence post and watched as Anna reached the tracks. She looked around nervously, clutching her phone in her hand as though it were her only lifeline. And then I saw him. A figure stepped out from the shadows. Tall, lean, his hood pulled low over his face. My breath caught in my throat. "Anna," he said, his voice low and urgent. Even from where I hid, I could hear the sharp edge of desperation. She froze, her hands shaking. "I told you not to come here," she whispered. "You didn't give me a choice," he shot back. "You know what's at stake. If you don't do what we agreed, it's not just me who's in danger. It's you and your mother." My blood ran cold at those words. Whoever this man was, he knew about me. He was using me as leverage against my daughter. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to run out and confront him, but I forced myself to stay hidden. I needed to hear more. Anna's voice trembled. "I can't keep this secret anymore. It's killing me. Maybe I should just tell her." "No," the man barked, stepping closer. "If she finds out, everything falls apart. Do you understand? We'll both pay the price." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Anna wrapped her arms around herself, her whole body shaking. Finally, she nodded weakly. "Fine, but this is the last time. I can't keep lying to her." The man's tone softened, but only slightly. "One more time, Anna. Just one more. After that, I swear you'll be free of all this." He reached out, resting a hand on her shoulder. She flinched but didn't pull away. Then, after a long pause, she turned and walked away, leaving him standing there in the shadows. I waited until she was gone before daring to move. My knees felt weak, my heart racing so fast it hurt. Whoever that man was, he held a terrifying power over my daughter. And whatever secret they shared, it was big enough that revealing it could destroy me, as the letters had said. I followed Anna back home in silence, staying far enough behind that she never noticed. She slipped into the house, closing the door gently behind her. A few minutes later, I heard her footsteps on the stairs, her bedroom door shutting once more. I stayed awake the rest of the night, staring into the dark. The pieces didn't fit together yet, but one thing was clear. Anna wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting me. And if I didn't find out the truth soon, I might lose her to whatever shadow she was entangled in. The next morning, she acted as though nothing had happened. She greeted me with a small smile, asked if I wanted tea, and chatted idly about the weather. But her eyes told a different story. They were haunted, red-rimmed from crying, filled with secrets she was desperate to hide. I realized then that I could no longer wait for her to come to me. Whatever this man knew, whatever he was holding over her, it was dangerous. And I needed to uncover it before it swallowed my daughter whole. So I made a vow to myself that day. The next time she left to meet him, I wouldn't just follow. I would step in. I would confront the man in the shadows and demand the truth. Because a mother's love can face even the darkest of secrets, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The following days passed in a blur, each one heavier than the last. I tried to keep things normal between Anna and me, cooking meals, chatting about her classes, pretending life was ordinary. But beneath the surface, my heart carried a storm. I couldn't stop replaying the man's words at the train tracks. He knew me. He knew my daughter. And he held some kind of power over her that terrified her enough to keep me in the dark. Every glance at Anna reminded me how fragile she seemed. She laughed at the right times, said all the right things, but I could see it in her eyes. She was drowning under a secret she couldn't share. I caught her more than once, staring off into space, her hands clenched tightly in her lap as though she were holding herself together by sheer will. Each time, my chest ached with the urge to pull her close and tell her she didn't have to fight this alone. But I also knew, if I pushed too hard, she might retreat even further. And that was the last thing I wanted. So instead, I watched, and I waited. And then, just a few nights later, the opportunity came. It was almost midnight when I heard the familiar creak of her door. My heart leapt. She was leaving again. I slipped on my coat, my shoes barely making a sound on the floorboards, and followed her out into the night. The air was sharp and cold, biting at my skin as I kept to the shadows. She walked briskly, her hood pulled over her head, and soon enough we were back at the old train yard. But this time I didn't stay hidden. I waited until she stepped onto the tracks, until the man emerged from the darkness just as before, his hood masking his face. I waited until I heard him say her name in that low, urgent tone. And then, with my heart hammering in my chest, I stepped out from behind the fence. "Enough," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I want answers. Right now." Both of them spun toward me. Anna's face went pale, her eyes widening in horror. "Mom, what are you doing here?" The man stiffened, his hands balling into fists at his sides. "You shouldn't be here," he growled, his voice laced with warning. But I stood my ground. "You've been threatening my daughter, sending her letters, dragging her out here in the middle of the night. I won't let this continue. Whatever this secret is, I deserve to know. And you," I pointed at him, anger overtaking my fear, "you need to leave her alone." For a moment the night was silent except for the wind whistling through the broken structures. Then the man laughed, low and bitter. "You really don't know, do you?" Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Please, stop," she whispered. "Don't tell her." But the man shook his head. "She has a right to know. And if you won't tell her, Anna, I will." Slowly, he pushed his hood back, revealing a gaunt face with sharp features and hollow eyes. He looked young, maybe only a few years older than Anna, but there was a hardness to him, a weariness far beyond his age. I stared at him, my mind scrambling to place his face. And then, like a distant memory, it hit me. I remembered seeing him once, years ago, standing at the edge of our driveway, speaking quietly to Anna before she hurried him away. I had thought nothing of it at the time, just a friend from school, perhaps. But now, standing before me, he looked nothing like a friend. "Who are you?" I demanded. His eyes narrowed. "My name doesn't matter. What matters is what Anna knows. She saw something she was never meant to see. And if you talk." He paused, his gaze hardening. "People will get hurt." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? What did she see?" Anna stepped forward quickly, her voice breaking. "Mom, please don't. I didn't want you involved. I was trying to protect you." Her words cut through me, both tender and terrifying. Protect me from what? What could be so dangerous that my own daughter would carry the burden alone, night after night? The man's voice sliced through the silence. "She saw something that ties me to people you don't want to know. Dangerous people. If the wrong person finds out she talked, neither of you will be safe." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Dangerous people? Threats of harm? This wasn't just about some teenage mistake or a petty crime. This was something much bigger. My heart pounded, fear and fury colliding inside me. I turned to Anna, my voice trembling. "Is this true? Did you see something?" Tears spilled down her cheeks as she nodded, her shoulders shaking. "I didn't mean to, Mom. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But now he says if anyone finds out, they'll come after us." The man stepped closer, his voice urgent. "Exactly. That's why she has to keep quiet. That's why you both have to stay out of this. If you tell anyone, if you go to the police, it won't just be Anna's life on the line. It'll be yours too." The night air grew colder, sharper, as the weight of his words sank in. I looked at my daughter, her tear-streaked face, her trembling hands, her haunted eyes, and I knew this was only the beginning. The secret she had been carrying wasn't just dark. It was dangerous. And now I was in it too. The silence that followed was unbearable. My breath hung in the cold night air as I tried to steady myself. Anna stood frozen between us, her eyes darting nervously from the young man to me, her lips trembling as though she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. I wanted to shake her, to force the truth from her, but at the same time I wanted to wrap her in my arms and shield her from whatever darkness she had stumbled into. Finally I whispered, "Anna, what did you see?" Her gaze fell to the ground. She twisted her hands together, her shoulders trembling. "I didn't mean to be there, Mom," she said softly. "I wasn't supposed to see anything." I was walking home from study group a few weeks ago, and I cut through the alley behind Carter's garage. I thought it would be quicker. That's when. She stopped, her throat tightening. The young man cut in sharply. That's when she saw something she can't unsee, something that doesn't concern her. Doesn't concern her? I snapped, my voice trembling with anger. She's my daughter. Anything that threatens her life concerns me. Anna looked up at me then, her eyes full of fear. "Mom," I saw them. A group of men. They were unloading boxes from a van. At first, I thought it was just some delivery, but then one of the boxes fell open. She swallowed hard, her face paling. It wasn't groceries or tools or anything ordinary. It was full of guns. The words hit me like a blow. Guns. A van full of them, hidden in the shadows of our quiet little town. My knees felt weak, and I had to grip the rusted fence beside me to keep from collapsing. Anna's voice cracked as she continued. "They didn't see me at first, but I froze. And that's when she pointed toward the young man, he spotted me. He told me to run before the others noticed. I didn't know who he was, but he warned me that if I breathed a word of what I saw, those men would come after me, and after you too." I turned slowly to face him, fury burning through my fear. So you've been the one sending those letters? Threatening my daughter? Terrorizing her day and night? His jaw clenched. You don't understand. I was trying to protect her. Those letters weren't threats. They were warnings. If the men I work for knew she had seen what was in that van, she'd already be gone. I'm the only reason she's still alive. Anna shook her head, tears streaming down her face. But you're still part of it. You're working with them. His expression hardened, but there was something broken in his eyes. I didn't have a choice. I got pulled into this years ago. If I try to leave, they'll kill me. If I say too much, they'll kill me. But when I saw you there that night, Anna, I knew you were in danger. That's why I've been keeping you quiet. It's the only way I can protect you without putting myself or you in even more danger. My heart twisted with conflict. I didn't know whether to believe him or not. Every part of me screamed to drag Anna away from him, to run as far as we could and never look back. But another part of me saw the desperation in his eyes, the fear that mirrored my own. He wasn't just some villain. He was trapped, just like Anna. I took a shaky breath. If what you're saying is true, then we can't just stay silent. This is bigger than all of us. We need to go to the police. No? Both Anna and the young man said at once. He stepped closer, his voice low and urgent. You don't get it. The police are already compromised. Some of those men, the ones moving the guns, they have connections everywhere. If you go to the authorities, word will get back, and you'll both be dead before the night is over. Anna clutched my arm, her fingers digging in. He's right, Mom. That's why I didn't say anything. I wanted to tell you, I really did, but I couldn't put you in that kind of danger. My throat tightened, tears burning behind my eyes. My daughter had been carrying this nightmare on her shoulders alone, believing she was protecting me by keeping silent. I pulled her into my arms, holding her trembling body against mine. Oh, my sweet girl, you should never have had to go through this alone. The young man glanced around nervously, his body tense. We shouldn't be talking here. If anyone followed us, we're sitting ducks. Go home. Keep your doors locked, and whatever you do, don't let Anna out of your sight. Before I could respond, he pulled his hood back up and melted into the shadows, vanishing into the night. Anna clung to me, her tears soaking my coat. Mom, what are we going to do? She whispered. I stroked her hair, my mind racing. I didn't have an answer yet. All I knew was that the trip I had been planning felt like a lifetime ago. Now, our lives had been entangled in something far more dangerous than I ever imagined. And as much as I wanted to pretend we could just hide from it, deep down I knew, sooner or later the darkness would come knocking at our door, and when it did, I had to be ready. The days that followed were some of the most uneasy of my life. Every sound outside the house made me jump. Every knock at the door sent a shiver down my spine. I kept the curtains drawn and the doors locked, something I had never done before. My once warm, welcoming home now felt like a fortress, and still, it didn't feel safe enough. Anna tried to go on with her routine, but I could see the strain wearing on her. She was quieter than ever, her eyes always scanning the street outside, her shoulders tensing at the smallest noises. She didn't sleep well. Sometimes I would hear her pacing in her room at night, whispering frantically into her phone. I never heard the other side of the conversation, but I knew who she was talking to. The young man from the train yard, the one who claimed to be protecting her. I hated it. I hated that she still trusted him enough to stay in contact, and I hated even more that I couldn't forbid it without pushing her away. But deep down, I also knew he was the only connection we had to understanding what we were truly up against. One evening, as I was washing dishes, I noticed headlights sweep across the window. A black SUV slowed as it passed our house, then lingered just long enough to make my stomach drop. I froze, my hands submerged in the sink, watching from the corner of my eye until the vehicle finally drove away. When I told Anna, she went pale. "They're watching us," she whispered. Her hands trembled as she clutched the back of a chair. "Mom, they know I saw them. They must think I've told you by now." My instinct was to run, to pack bags and disappear into the night. But where could we go? If these men had connections in the police and in town, then running would only delay the inevitable. We had to be smarter. We had to be careful. That night I barely slept. Around 2 a.m, I heard it, a faint sound outside, like footsteps on gravel. I crept to the window, careful not to make a sound, and pulled back the curtain just enough to peek out. A figure stood across the street, barely visible in the dim glow of the streetlight. He didn't move. He just stood there, facing our house, watching. I pulled the curtain shut, my heart pounding in my chest. When I turned, Anna was standing in the hallway, her eyes wide. "You saw him too?" she whispered. I nodded, pulling her close. "We're not safe here anymore," I said. The following day, I made a decision. If the police couldn't be trusted, there had to be someone else. Someone outside of town. Someone who wasn't already compromised. A family friend, perhaps, or a lawyer. Anyone who could help us figure out how to handle this without drawing attention. But before I could act, things escalated. That afternoon, a letter appeared on our doorstep. Not in the mailbox, not slipped through the slot, placed directly on the mat, as though someone had walked right up to the house. My hands shook as I picked it up and unfolded it. The message was short, scrawled in the same jagged handwriting as before. "Keep quiet, or next time it won't just be a warning." I felt the blood drain from my face. I showed it to Anna, and she burst into tears. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "This is all my fault." I held her tightly, forcing my own fear down so she wouldn't feel it. "No, sweetheart, this is not your fault. You didn't ask to see what you saw. You didn't ask for any of this." But inside I was terrified. Whoever had left that note had been close enough to touch our front door, close enough to reach us whenever they wanted. That night, Anna and I slept in the same room. I pushed a dresser in front of the door and kept the phone by my side, though I wasn't sure who I could even call. I lay awake listening to the sounds of the house, every creak and groan amplified by my fear. And then, just as I was starting to drift, I heard it, the faint scrape of something against the window. I shot upright, my heart in my throat. Slowly, I reached for the curtain, my hands trembling. When I pulled it back, I gasped. There, etched crudely into the glass, were 2 words scratched with something sharp: "Stay silent." I stumbled back, my breath caught in my chest. Whoever they weren't just watching us anymore. They had been at the window while we slept. I knew then that time was running out. If we didn't act soon, their threats would become more than words carved into glass. And I was determined not to let that happen. After that night when I found the words "Stay silent" scratched into our window, I knew we couldn't wait any longer. The danger was no longer creeping at the edges of our lives. It was pressing right against the glass, staring us in the face. Every instinct inside me screamed that if I didn't act soon, I would lose my daughter forever. I decided the only way forward was to confront the young man again. He was the key. He knew the truth about the men with the van, and he knew how far their reach extended. More than that, he was the only one who seemed to care whether Anna survived. As much as I distrusted him, I needed his help. The opportunity came quicker than I expected. Late the following evening, Anna's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and I saw her whole body stiffen. "It's him," she whispered. "He wants to meet tonight." I looked into her frightened eyes and nodded firmly. "We'll go, together." At first she protested, terrified of me being dragged deeper into this nightmare. But I wouldn't hear of it. I had spent too long watching from the sidelines, hiding behind curtains and pretending not to know. If we were going to survive this, I had to stand beside her, not behind her. We walked through the night in silence, every step heavy with dread. When we reached the train yard, he was already there, pacing anxiously beneath the broken lights. His hood was pulled low, but I recognized his restless movements immediately. When he spotted us, his eyes widened. "You brought her?" he demanded. "Yes," I said, my voice firm. "No more secrets. If you want us to keep quiet, you owe me the truth, all of it." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he ran a hand through his hair, his voice breaking with frustration. "You don't understand what you're asking. If you know what I know, you'll both be targets." "We already are," I snapped. "They've been watching the house, leaving notes, scratching threats into our window while we sleep. Don't tell me we're safer in the dark. We're not." His shoulders sagged, defeat etched across his face. He looked younger in that moment, less like a hardened criminal and more like a scared boy who had stumbled into a world he couldn't escape. "All right," he said finally. "I'll tell you." He explained that the men Anna had seen were part of a smuggling ring, moving weapons through our quiet town under the radar. They used the old garage and the train yard as drop points, hidden in plain sight where no one would think to look. He had been forced into helping them after his own family fell into debt. "They promised me protection," he said bitterly. "But protection turned into chains. Once you're in, there's no getting out." He looked at Anna with a flicker of guilt in his eyes. "When you stumbled on that drop, I panicked. I knew if the others saw you, you'd be dead. So I covered for you. Told them it was nothing, that no one had been there. But that only bought time. If they ever suspect you know more than you should." He trailed off, shaking his head. The pieces clicked together in my mind. The letters, the meetings, the threats. It had all been his desperate attempt to keep Anna quiet long enough to shield her from the men he worked for. But now, with messages being carved into our windows, it was clear his efforts weren't enough. "So, what do we do?" I asked, my voice steady though my insides quaked. "How do we end this?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "There's only one way. I know when the next shipment is coming. If we can get proof, photos, recordings, and get it into the hands of someone outside their reach, someone the ring can't buy off, then maybe you'll be safe. But it's a risk. If they catch you, there's no going back." I felt Anna grip my hand tightly, her fingers trembling in mine. My heart screamed to say no, to drag her home and lock the doors, but another part of me, the stronger part, knew this was our only chance. We couldn't hide forever, so we agreed. The following night, under the cover of darkness, the three of us crept back to the garage where it had all started. My hands shook as I held the small camera the young man had given me. Anna clutched my arm, her breath shallow. We hid behind stacks of crates, watching as the van pulled in. Men emerged, their faces shadowed, their movements efficient. They pried open the doors, and just as Anna had described, crates of weapons gleamed under the flickering light. I snapped photos with trembling fingers, every click of the camera echoing like thunder in my ears. At one point, one of the men glanced in our direction, and my heart nearly stopped. But he shrugged and went back to work. When it was over, we slipped away into the night, clutching the evidence like a lifeline. The young man kept his word. He connected us with someone far from town, a contact who wasn't on the take. It took days of fear, hiding, and whispered phone calls, but finally the evidence was handed over. And then, like a storm breaking, everything changed. One morning, news broke of a massive raid. The smuggling ring had been exposed. Arrests were made. Vans were seized. The names of corrupted officials spilled into the headlines. For the first time in weeks, I breathed. truly breathed. Anna sat beside me on the couch, her head resting against my shoulder. "It's over," she whispered, as though she couldn't quite believe it. I kissed her hair and held her close. "It's over, sweetheart. You're safe now." The young man disappeared soon after. I never saw him again. Part of me wonders if he finally found his freedom, or if he was swallowed up by the shadows he had lived in for so long. But I will always remember that. For all his flaws, he risked himself to save my daughter. Life eventually settled back into something resembling normal. But I was never quite the same. The letters, the threats, the nights spent in fear, they had changed me. They reminded me that evil can hide in the quietest corners of our world, and that sometimes the people we least expect are the ones who save us. As for Anna, she grew stronger from it all. Wiser, too. She learned the cost of silence and the power of truth. And though she still carries scars from those weeks of terror, she no longer carries them alone. Because if there's one thing I know now, it's this. No matter how dark the secret, no matter how heavy the burden, a mother's love will always stand against it. Always. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story I have to tell.